All right, ready to dive deep into something kind of tricky, codependency.
Oh, yeah. Codependency. It's something that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's something that can be really hard to identify.
Definitely.
So today we're looking at this blog post from Lestallion. It's called 50 Journal Prompts for Codependency.
Oh, interesting.
And I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of go through these prompts and see how they can help us understand ourselves and our relationships better.
Yeah, I think journaling can be a really powerful tool for self-discovery.
Totally. Okay, so first things first. For someone who's like, codependency, what is that? How would you explain it?
Well, I think a good way to think about it is like a seesaw. You know how a seesaw needs balance to work?
Right.
So in a relationship, if one person's needs and emotions are always outweighing the others, it's like that seesaw is stuck.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what codependency is. It's this imbalance where one person relies so heavily on the other person for validation that their own identity gets blurry.
So it's more than just being clingy.
Yeah, it's deeper than that.
It's like your whole sense of self gets wrapped up in the other person.
Exactly.
Well,
And it can lead to a lot of problems down the line.
like what? What are some of the red flags?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is sacrificing your own needs to please the other person.
Oh.
And this can show up in a lot of different ways, like saying yes to things you don't want to do or always putting their needs before your own.
I've totally been there.
Yeah. And over time, this can lead to feeling resentful and even losing yourself in the relationship.
That makes sense. That's where the journaling comes in, right?
Yeah. Journaling can help you start to unpack all of that and figure out what's really going on.
Okay, so let's dig into some of these Lestallion prompts. Their first section is all about understanding yourself, which makes sense. Got to start with the basics, right?
Right. Self-awareness is key.
And they have this one prompt that really jumped out at me. Reflect on a time when you felt overly responsible for someone else's emotions.
Oh, that's a good one. That definitely speaks to a codependent tendency.
Right, like if someone's upset, it automatically becomes my problem to fix.
It's that people-pleasing instinct in overdrive.
And I think for a lot of us, it comes from this place of thinking that our value comes from making others happy.
Absolutely, instead of recognizing our own inherent worth.
Whoa, yeah. So constantly putting others first can actually be a sign of low self-esteem.
It can be. And there's another prompt in this section that gets at this. Describe a situation where you neglected your own needs to please someone else.
Oof, that one hits close to home.
It's about recognizing those moments where we abandon ourselves to avoid conflict or get approval.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at some point.
And it's not about beating ourselves up for it. It's about using those experiences to learn and grow.
That's so true. So we're already seeing how these prompts can be powerful, right?
Definitely. They help us see those patterns that we might not even be aware of.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to our soul.
Exactly. And sometimes that can be a little uncomfortable,
Sure.
but it's also necessary if we want to create healthier relationships.
I'm ready to get uncomfortable.
Me too. So are you ready to move on to the next section?
Let's do it. I want to see how all of this plays out in our relationships with other people.
Okay. Let's dive into those prompts about exploring relationships.
Perfect.
I think it's going to get really interesting.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, let's go. So now we're getting into how codependency shows up in our actual relationships.
Right, because it's one thing to understand it in theory,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah, you got to see it in action.
you got to see how it plays out with like a partner or a friend or a family member.
Exactly. And these Lestallion prompts, they really get into that dynamic.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so there's this one. Think about a significant relationship in your life. How does it make you feel, and what role do you play in it?
I like that it goes deeper than just like, do you like this person? It's getting at the feeling.
Yeah, the feeling is key because, codependency, it can disguise itself as love.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So you have to pay attention to those subtle cues.
So like what kind of cues are we talking about?
Like, do you feel energized or depleted in this relationship?
Mm.
Are you constantly, walking on eggshells? Or are you always the one fixing things?
Oh, those are some good questions to ask yourself.
Yeah, they can be real eye-openers.
I'm starting to see how these prompts can be like a relationship diagnostic tool.
Exactly. They can help you identify some of those unhealthy patterns.
And once you identify them, you can start to change them.
Right. And speaking of patterns, here's another prompt that's really relevant. Write about a time when you felt you had to fix someone else's problems.
The classic rescuer complex.
Exactly.
But hold on. Isn't it a good thing to want to help someone?
It depends. It's all about the intent versus the impact.
Oh.
If you're constantly swooping in to save someone, You might actually be enabling them
Oh, that's interesting.
or preventing them from learning and growing on their own.
So, like, even with good intentions, you could be doing more harm than good.
Yeah. And it can also create an imbalance of power in the relationship.
Makes you think.
It does. So sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is step back and let the person figure things out on their own.
Give them the space to grow.
Exactly.
This is reminding me of something Lestallion said in the blog post.
Go on.
They said that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding, which sounds so obvious,
It does.
but in practice, it can be so hard.
Yeah, it's a lot more nuanced than it seems on the surface.
Because with codependency, respect can get all out of whack.
Totally. Like one person's needs might always come first.
And that's not healthy for anyone in the long run.
Nope. Not sustainable at all.
So how do we shift from that codependent mindset to something that's more like balanced and empowering?
Well, that's where the next set of prompts comes in.
Lay it on me.
Lestallion dives into building self-confidence and embracing independence, which are like the antidotes to codependency.
Interesting. So we're moving from fixing others to empowering ourselves.
Exactly. It's a total game changer.
Okay, I'm here for it. Tell me more.
So one prompt that really gets to the heart of this is think about a time when you made a decision based solely on your own needs.
Whoa, that's a tough one.
It can be, especially if you're used to putting everyone else first.
But it's crucial, right?
It is. It's about recognizing that your needs and desires are valid and that it's okay to prioritize them.
Without feeling guilty.
Exactly.
It's like finally saying, hey, my needs matter too.
It's a revolutionary act of self-care.
And it ties into another prompt that I love. Reflect on your personal goals. How do they align with your values?
Oh, yeah, that one's good. It helps you reconnect with those passions and dreams that you might have put on hold.
Because you were busy taking care of everyone else.
Right. It's about reclaiming your own life and your own narrative.
And that can be both exhilarating and terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. It's like stepping out of a familiar role and into the unknown.
Yeah, you're not the caretaker anymore. You're
the protagonist of your own story.
And I love how Lestallion talks about independence.
How do they put it?
They say it's a journey of self-discovery and personal growth. It's not a destination, it's an ongoing process.
So true. It's about shedding those layers of people-pleasing and uncovering your authentic self.
Okay, we've talked about understanding ourselves, navigating our relationships, building self-confidence, and embracing independence.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, but I think we're getting somewhere. So what's the final piece of the puzzle? How do we actually cultivate healthy relationships?
Well, that's where Lestallion's final set of prompts comes in. And I think you're going to love this part.
Okay, hit me with it. I'm ready to create relationships that feel good and supportive and not totally draining.
I think you're going to find these prompts really helpful.
All right, so we've done all this inner work, figured out our patterns, built up our self-confidence.
Yeah, we've laid the groundwork.
Now, how do we actually put this all into practice? Like, how do we build healthy relationships? Lestallion, help us out here.
They do. They have this last section all about cultivating healthy relationships.
Okay, yeah, because it's one thing to know what a healthy relationship should look like, but then it's like, okay, how do I actually...
How do you make it happen?
Yeah, how do I create that?
Yeah.
So what's the secret sauce?
Well, one of the key ingredients, I think, is boundaries.
Boundaries. Oh, yeah, those are important.
Yeah, and Lestallion has this prompt. Describe a moment when you set a healthy boundary in a relationship.
Okay, so it's not just about, like, knowing what your boundaries are. It's about actually...
It's about enforcing them.
Yeah, putting them out there.
Yes. Which can be really hard.
Oh, my gosh. So hard, especially if you're used to people-pleasing.
Right. It can feel so uncomfortable at first.
But it's so important.
It is. It's about saying, hey, this is what I'm okay with, and this is what I'm not okay with.
And that takes practice, right? Like, you don't just wake up one day and suddenly...
You're a boundary-setting master.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a skill you have to develop.
I like that the prompt also asks you to think about how the other person reacted to your boundary.
Oh, that's a good point. Because that tells you a lot about the relationship.
It does. Like, did they respect your boundary or did they try to push back?
Or guilt you into giving in.
Exactly.
So even the way someone responds to a boundary can be like, a little red flag.
It can be a big red flag.
Okay, this is making me think about all my relationships.
I know, right? It's a lot to process.
It is, but in a good way.
In a growth kind of way.
Exactly. Okay, so boundaries are huge. What else is important for building those healthy connections?
Communication. Lestallion has this prompt. Reflect on your emotional needs. How do you express them in your relationships?
Ooh, emotional needs. That's deeper than just like practical needs,
Sure, it
right?
is. It's about those core needs that we all have, like feeling loved and respected and supported.
Unsafe.
And safe, yes. And in codependent relationships, those needs often get overlooked.
Because you're so focused on the other person's need.
Exactly.
So this prompt is encouraging us to like turn the spotlight back on ourselves a little bit.
And to figure out how to communicate those needs in a healthy way.
Yeah, because it's not about being demanding or needy,
Right. It's about being assertive and clear about what you need.
while still being respectful of the other person.
It's a balance.
It is a balance for sure.
But it's a balance worth finding.
I'm really liking these Lestallion prompts. They're so thought-provoking.
They are. They really get you thinking about your relationships in a whole new way.
And you know what else I appreciate about this blog post? They emphasize the importance of those core values,
Like what?
like trust and respect and mutual support.
Oh, yeah. Those are essential for any healthy relationship.
And I think sometimes we forget that those things don't just happen automatically.
You have to work at them.
Yeah, you have to nurture them and make them a priority.
And be willing to put in the effort.
So it's not about finding the perfect partner. It's about...
Creating the right conditions for a healthy relationship to thrive.
This has been such a great deep dive. I feel like we've covered so much ground.
We have. From unpacking codependency to exploring our patterns to building self-confidence, and
Now we're equipped to actually go out there and build healthy relationships.
yes. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
There will be bumps along the way, for sure.
Yeah. But every step you take towards greater self-awareness and healthier connections is a win.
So true. And listeners, if you're feeling lost or overwhelmed or just need a little extra support,
Don't be afraid to reach out.
yeah, there are so many resources available, like therapists, support groups, even trusted friends.
People who want to see you succeed.
Exactly. And as Lestallion says, healthy relationships are built on trust, respect, and mutual support.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of codependency and the power of journaling.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, and keep growing.